Okay, welcome everyone to another edition of the Vanguard Employer Educational event. Hope everybody finds everybody healthy and safe and getting back to some sense of normalcy here. So I'm excited about today's topic. We have a great topic. Rob and I have been talking about doing this for quite a while, and I'm really happy he was able to join us today. I think you're going to get a lot of value at what we're going to talk about today. Before we get there, just again, I want to just reemphasize for those of you who don't know us, Vanguard is this year, a 22-year-old benefit consulting firm. We specialize in working with our clients on health insurance, employee benefit solutions. We have a very big focus in education and open enrollment strategies that are very forward-thinking. So we have started this event now. We're just about a year. We started in person just before the pandemic. We started the Vanguard Employer Educational Series. And our goal with this, if you haven't been on one of these before, is to provide content to our clients, our friends, our partners that we feel is valuable and that is needed. So most of the topics that we try to present are from feedback that we've been getting over the years. And certainly today's topic, self-insurance, self-funding 101, is one of them, because we find that very few people really have a good working knowledge and understanding of self-funded. So that's what the Vanguard Educational event is all about. In 2 weeks, we will have Tom McKiernan from EP6, and we will be talking about remote enrollment strategies and capabilities that you should be considering especially now that we have been through a year of a pandemic and people are still employing their employees remotely. Our clients have been looking for creative strategies to educate their employees on their benefits and communicate them. So I'm excited to have that one, and that will be in 2 weeks from today at 12 noon. All of our events are at the same time. I do want to mention that if you have not seen one of our recent blasts, there was a bill signed into law on the 27th of December that carried over some of the IRS regulations on cafeteria plans from last year. So the bill extends, employers can extend their grace period and carryover periods through the end of 2021. So it removes the $550 carryover threshold, and it essentially makes a 12-month 2020 plan year into a 24-month. So folks that have FSA elections for 2020 that didn't use them will get the entire year to use that. And that also applies to dependent care. We've had a lot of clients ask us about this. So I wanted to mention it, especially with the impact of the pandemic and what that's had on daycare scenarios. A lot of people had money in their daycare dependent care reimbursement accounts that they weren't able to use in the last year, and still might find that their location that they're utilizing is closed. So the IRS extended that through 2020. We've also been getting a lot of questions on pre-tax elections and whether they can be changed. The IRS did last year extend that through 12/31 of 2020, but we have not seen any guidance on that. Our feeling is that will be extended, but we haven't seen any guidance on that as well. So we'll let you know on a future event when we do hear something about that. Last thing I wanted to just mention, if you are working with us as a client, please make sure to ask us about the technology that we provide. Vanguard is also working with ease for our small group clients and has solution for our large group clients as well. And we are providing Ben admin technology and onboarding services. And some of that is included in our value proposition. So talk to us about that as we go forward. With that, I am recording this. And I do want to say that we want to keep this really interactive today. We have an intimate group here, which is great. So please feel free to, if you want to type your questions in the chat, or even Rob, I'm sure you'll stop along the way to take any questions. Let's keep it really informal and interactive. I think you're going to find this great. Rob has been with IBA, International Benefit Administrators, for over 20 years now. He's been a veteran of the insurance field, the benefit field, and of course in the field of self-insurance and working with a third-party administrator for many years. So he is an expert in this field, and I thought it would be great to have him on here today just to give us a flavor of what's going on in the self-insurance world, who's right for it, and some of the particulars on it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and then we'll have a very interactive conversation.
Ed,
Rob,
I
take it away.
thank you very much for having me today. I'm super excited to go through, the basics of a self-funded health plan and to kind of differentiate what self-funding is and what it does in the marketplace, especially versus the common fully insured plan, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with in some aspect. I work for IBA. IBA is International Benefits Administrators, located in Garden City, Long Island. We are probably one of the few remaining independent TPAs in the Northeast, and probably only a handful of ones in New York, maybe one or two. We are the largest TPA in the area, writing clients anywhere from 50 employees up to about 2,000 employees. That's where a self-funded marketplace for a TPA exists. Our really hallmark is taking many groups for the first time from a fully insured, I thought I turned this off, apologize, a fully insured marketplace into a self-funded plan. And we do this through a variety of different ways. Generally, we look to evaluate a client's risk tolerance, and get to know a little bit about them before the process starts. Generally, that's done by Ed as a good pre-screening of coming to us and saying, hey, I think this client has the knowledge base, has the ability, and understands a little bit of what it would take to become a self-funded entity. And really for us, those could be many different types of clients. I was speaking to Ed before. People often ask me, hey, well, what's your typical client at IBA? Is there a specific industry or employer group that you bring on that you see the same, industry over and over? There are a few industries that are a little bit more prevalent to self-funding, such as healthcare providers, nonprofits, groups that would like to keep a very high level of benefit without reducing a level of service and also getting it at a very fair cost. But if I was to say that there is one thing or two different molds that fit our clients, one is a client that wants to achieve a very high level benefit plan, be able to give that to their employees, maybe one that in the current fully insured marketplace is cost prohibitive. And then the other one is which is also a cost sensitive client. And then we have clients that are very cost sensitive. And those might be, when we have an employer group that has many minimum wage participants, large restaurant groups, some maybe entities that did not have to offer health insurance 10 or 15 years ago. So it's really can come from anywhere, but all of the clients have one thing in common is they all understand by moving to a self-funded health plan, it gives them a greater sense of transparency and understanding of what's driving the cost behind their health plan. And doing this now for as long as I have been, my simple, question is to many of the CFOs, CEOs, and decision makers that we meet is health insurance is the one item that you pay for on a monthly basis when you run a business, and you have very little idea of what the utilization is behind the premiums that you're paying. Okay. Pretty much if you walk into any business and a good business can tell you what they've paid for something, what the cost is, and how that equates to their business model. Unfortunately, in a fully insured plan, the limited amount of data leaves an employer in a situation where it's very hard for them to make an astute financial decision based on what they're given from an insurance carrier. Okay. When you go to a self-funded plan, that all goes away because a client is seeing the runs of their claims, and all of the other information that goes with the plan. So without getting too much into how that works, I'm going to go over a real basic, just kind of high level self-funding 101 proposal. You'll see, we'll talk a little bit about how it works at any time. If anyone has any questions, please feel free, raise your hand. I'll be more than happy to stop. All right. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay. Oh, I gotta go back. Paging ahead here, Ed, and of course. There we go. Okay. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is just a brief self-funding overview, and it's really going to compare what a self-funded plan is versus a fully insured plan. That's usually the best way for us to start, is with what you know, and then with what maybe you don't know or aren't so familiar with. Here's my disclaimer about IBA. I spoke to you a little bit about us before. We've been around since the 1970s. We are not owned by an insurance carrier, an insurance network. So we are agnostic when it comes to our clients and placing them in the best of breed products. And that could range anywhere from the PPO networks we work with. We work with several, right? So we have Cigna as a network at IBA. We have Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have some of the local networks, MagnaCare and Emblem as well. Okay, so there is no really one size fits all type of mentality at IBA. Every client from every different perspective is unique, and we try to bring them to the best of breed product in that wherever they might be, okay, geographically. These are just some testimonials, and Ed, you can feel free to send this out to everybody afterwards too.
Sure.
Our clients in the Northeast area range from integrated healthcare providers, very large hospitals, food distributors, local sports teams, manufacturing firms, educational organizations. There is really no set employer group that makes a better self-funded client than anyone else. Okay. And the reason most clients leave a fully insured plan is really the following. This chart is just an example of the financial impact that moving to a self-funded platform has. Okay. So this chart is an actual client of mine. When we started with this client, now it's about 5 years ago, they were 179 employees. They have grown since then to a little bit over, maybe in the mid 200s. But it was pretty simple. They were with a carrier, Oxford Health Plans. They had been receiving on pretty much a regular basis anywhere between 12 to 18% renewals. The data that Oxford was giving them was not the greatest and did not allow them to make maybe some of the choices to leave or go to another carrier. We brought them on as a client. Now it's about 5 years ago, and these are the first 3 years of their history. We assumed a modest 10% premium increase, even though they had been receiving a greater increase than that from the carrier. The year we took them over was 18%. And over time, when we benchmark what their increased rate was through IBA, which is actually better than this 9%, you will see in year one, clients saved, went from having to pay a $1.8 million fully insured premium to a plan cost of $1.5 million with IBA. The next year, very similar result. Our plan went to a 1.6 million cost, where the fully insured premium would have been now over $2 million. Bring us out to year three, $441,000 of savings, just because we set that bar so much lower in those first years. Now it's an exponential difference year in and year out. And over 3 years, this client saves a little over $1.1 million on a 170 life employer group. This was a tremendous cash flow to this group. I can specifically tell you that this is one of my clients. That is a nonprofit Medicare facility. The results of them saving this money in the last 5 years has led to them to grow and actually go out and bring on other facilities into their facility. And it's a pretty simple way that we as a TPA were able to achieve these savings. And this is fairly routine for most clients going from a fully insured to self-funded models in years 1 through however far down the line you'd like to go. And people often say, well, Rob, how did you do this? You know, you need to understand two things to understand where the savings from a self-funded model come from. The first is transparency and avoiding many of the things that increase or the increases inside a fully insured plan. Those things are reserves that need to be charged by your fully insured carrier. Okay. Taxes. This is a big piece of it as well. And I can dive into this in a couple more minutes. Retention, which is the way an insurance carrier decides they are going to charge you for your claims in a given year. And it's a percentage of your claims that they decide they're going to pay themselves to pay your claims. And things that also come back to a health plan when you are self-funded, like RX rebates and any other additional savings we can take through care management. You feel that directly inside a self-funded plan. Inside a fully insured plan, there could be those savings attributes, but the carrier is keeping them from themselves. Okay, I always give the perfect example of RX rebates. Any health plan in the United States has members in it that are taking brand name and specialty medications. Every time one of those drugs is dispensed, there is a rebate tied to it. In our world, the self-funded world, that is your money, Mr. Client, because you funded the claim for that RX. Okay. In a fully insured world, that does not exist. That is the carrier's money to keep. Okay.
Hey, Rob, I just want to interject here for a sec. So maybe if you could just speak to a bit, I think the word self-funded is a scary word
Yeah.
to a lot of people, right? And so especially if you're a smaller organization that's looking towards it, or even a nonprofit that has a board of directors they need to answer to, and budget is definitely a huge issue for those type of organizations. If you could just speak to for a moment about, you know, the size of an organization, who should be looking towards this, and you know, some of the things that alleviate that risk that may not make self-insurance such a scary word.
Yeah, and the word self-insurance, you know, what goes on. Well, I'm going to go through this next slide. This should help us out, Ed, tremendously. As we know, a fully insured carrier plan is where we pay a fixed premium to an insurance carrier every month. Okay. That premium is received in advance by the carrier and covers any potential claim cost, as well as insurance company overhead, commissions, reserves, risk insurance, and taxes. Today, like I said, many employers are moving to a self-funded health plan to customize not only the health plan, but also the financial aspects of the plan. And I'll get a little bit into that in a little bit down the line. Okay. In a self-funded plan, an employer assumes some or all of the risk. 95% of employers assume some of the risk. Okay. We buy a product called stop loss insurance. And stop loss insurance is a standalone product that is separate from IBA, the administrator, and exists in about 50 to 60 reinsurance markets in the United States. Unlike your fully insured carrier where you have 4, we have people in the marketplace that look at risk from a financial perspective and give that risk to you, Mr. Client, to protect your health plan. Okay. The protections that stop loss provide are the same exact protections that you have inside a fully insured contract. Okay. Our job as a TPA and Ed's job as a broker is to explain to you the different types of stop loss contracts that you could purchase as a self-funded entity. Okay. one of the great things about self-funding is, unlike a fully insured plan, there is no set risk design. Okay. You can have different deductibles. And when I mean deductibles, I'm not talking about your health plan, when you go to the doctor. We're talking about financial limits, and I'll get into those in a minute. And those are tailored to the client's risk tolerance. Okay. So we're going to provide you with a coverage of stop loss insurance, which is either going to be better or equal to what you would have inside a fully insured plan. So you will have a max in claims that you can pay over a certain time period. Generally, that max in claims, and for what us to run the plan is going to be less than what you're going to have to pay fully insured. Okay. The employer now controls the plan assets, and they retain those plan assets until it comes time to pay a claim. This is important. In a fully insured environment, you pay 12 times a year your fully insured premium, and that's it. The self-funded plan, you really have two aspects. You have the fixed cost to run the plan, which is us to administrate the plan and to buy that stop loss insurance I spoke about, and then you have your claims. Okay. Claims do not have to be funded until they come to you as an employer. This generally leads to some additional cash flow that never will exist inside a fully insured plan. Fully insured plan is pay me every month, regardless of what your claims are. Okay. All of this translates in the ability for the employer to avoid insurance company overhead charges. Okay. Our charges at IBA to pay claims and to administer your plan are generally about a third of what they would be if we were an insurance carrier. Okay. We are set up to be administratively better, quicker. We have better systems, and we have less bureaucracy. So that all translates to claims getting paid quicker, and you also, Mr. Employer, paying less for someone to pay your claims. Okay. Another big piece of the fully insured pie are profit margins and premium taxes. So, for example, for a fact, if you look at United Healthcare stock in the last 24 months, it would have one of the best investments you could have made. Insurance companies are generally not setting their calculations up to sell you a product to lose money. They have loss ratios that they must stick by, and they have profit margins baked into those loss ratios. Okay. So it is always in their auspice to make money on whatever client it is, regardless of their experience. And then the other big part is premium taxes. If you have $1 million or a $2 million fully insured premium, you as an employer pay taxes on that entire $1 million or $2 million, whatever that premium is. Inside a self-funded plan, it works a little bit differently. You would only be responsible for premium taxes on the actual insurance component of the plan, which is your stop loss insurance. And I'll get into that in a minute. And that's generally about 15 to 20% of the overall cost of the plan. So I would much rather have a client pay a premium tax on a $250,000 premium than on a $1.2 million fully insured premium. Big difference there. All right. People then say, well, Rob, how does this work? Okay. Like I had gone to before, in a self-funded plan, the employer is going to assume the responsibility to fund the plan and the claims. IBA, third-party administrator, we function almost like your insurance company. We provide all the customer service. We handle all the plan eligibility. We handle all the account management. And we give you our concierge medical service. So we're kind of a step above a carrier. Okay. The cost, like I had said before, usually 15 to 20 to 25% less than a fully insured plan, because the employer is directly funding the health cost. And then we purchase stop loss coverage to protect the plan. This coverage provides a ceiling on the financial risk of the self-funded plan. And I'll get into those two types of coverage There's really two that you need to know about. They're the most basic, and they're on the next page. To protect those plan assets, Ed and IBA are going to come back to a specific employer group or prospective client that's looking at a self-funded plan with two types of stop loss insurance. Okay. The most important is specific stop loss. Specific stop loss is very similar to your car deductible. I have $1,000 deductible on my car because I'm an insurance guy. I like a high deductible. I'll take the risk. Okay. I, as an individual, pay the first $1,000 of claims if I was to go out and smack my car up. Okay. The same works here with self-funded specific stop loss insurance. The employer is responsible for claims, medical and RX, up to a certain point. Let's say it's $50,000. Okay. So if someone does have a large claim, the employer has a cap on what they're going to pay for that individual in that contract period. And generally starts usually anywhere from 25,000, and then the largest groups might have, a couple 100,000. But most of the groups you write are anywhere between 50 and let's say $150,000. Now that deductible number is not set in stone. Okay. We will make recommendations of, hey, here's a $25,000 deductible. Here's a $50,000 deductible. Here's some deductibles in between. And why that's important is because as a entity that is going to be self-funded, you have choices that you do not have inside a fully insured model. Okay. If you got your renewal from United Healthcare and they hit you with an 18% increase, you could not go back to United Healthcare and say, hey, listen, inside your fully insured contract, you have the same thing, but you're not able to alter that. Okay. You cannot say to the carrier, hey, listen, I'd like to have a $25,000. They call it a pooling point. Okay. They'd say, sorry, our plan is filed with a $50,000 pooling point. Take it or leave it. With self-funding, the plan and the financials are also dictated to the client's risk tolerance. Okay. There is no one telling you what you need to buy from a risk perspective. It's very similar to how you buy property and casualty insurance. It has that same feel where you are in control of the financial aspect of the plan, something you will never be in control of with a fully insured plan. Okay. Specific coverage, like I said before, is set up to advance or reimburse any individual claim over a certain dollar amount. And that's for medical and RX claims. Okay. Then in addition to specific stop loss, we also urge clients to purchase aggregate stop loss. Aggregate stop loss is just going to protect against paid claims exceeding a predetermined combined dollar amount for all claims, right? So we've got this $50,000 deductible, let's say, on each individual employee, but then we have employees that go up to, let's say, 30,000, 40,000, 20,000. All of their claims together are what are calculated to your aggregate. Okay. By buying aggregate coverage, you as an employer have what we consider a max in claims. Meaning if we underwrite, or when the stop loss carrier underwrites your group, they are going to come to a number, and let's say it's $100 per employee per month that they expect your claims to be. They very simply add 25% on top of that number and would give you an aggregate of $125 per employee per month. And the reason being, it's pretty simple. An actuary knows if they underwrite every group the same way, you have less than a 0.005 chance of going over that aggregate number in any given year. Okay. It's technically a fool's bet we consider on our side, but it's one that you must take if you are a smaller entity. Okay. Because you need to have a max number just like you have when you're fully insured. Okay. So when we look at a case for risk tolerance and get in an RFP at the TPA, when we get situations where our max cost is close to or better than what a client is going to pay fully insured, we consider that a very attractive client to bring self-funded. Okay. Reason being is we know our worst case scenario is probably not going to happen. And if it does, it's still better than what you would have to pay being fully insured. Okay. I won't get too much into this next page, but similar to how we're able to choose different deductibles, specific deductibles as the prior pages, you also have flexibility as a self-funded entity into what type of contract you are going to buy. Okay. As everyone on the phone knows, there is a lag factor included when you incur a claim on a medical basis, meaning Rob Belvedere goes to the doctor January 1st. That claim might not get processed by my doctor until January 25th. By the time it makes it to us to get paid, it might not be sometime until the middle of February or the end of February, and that provider gets paid, let's say, the 1st of March. That is considered lag. There are different types of contracts you can buy for self-funding to deal with whatever lag that it is you might have, okay? The first time you come into a self-funded contract from a fully insured contract, you have no lag, right? Fully insured, you leave and you start new. So you have some options your first year. Those options are either a 12-12 contract or a 12-15 contract. Just know for today's conversation's purposes, the first number are the incurred dates of the claim, and the second number, the paid number, is when the claim is paid. So in a 12-12 contract covers all claims incurred within 12 months and paid in that same 12-month period, okay? It's an immature contract, all right? If you buy a 12-12 year one, we generally would tell you you need to buy a 15-12 or 18-12 in year two to go back and cover the claims that you incurred in the first 12 months that are now going to be paid in the next year. Okay. But like I had said before, stop loss is flexible. So you do not have to buy a 12-12 contract your first year. You could buy a 12-15 contract, which would cover all claims paid incurred in 12 months and then paid in 15 months, which would be 3 months after that 12-month date. Just goes back to the flexibility of stop loss and the different options you have at any time when you're self-funded. And my main contrast here is that these do not exist in a fully insured world. Okay. In addition to the actual stop loss, there are also some riders that you can purchase to enhance your stop loss. Okay. They allow you to leave the contract. Maybe if you would like to go back to fully insured, I can tell you that that very, very rarely happens. I actually have the first case I wrote at IBA as a sales guy 13 years ago. So most groups, I'd say our retention rate is about 98% once they move to a self-funded arrangement with a very good third-party administrator and a strong network. Okay, like I had said before, we use Blue Cross, we use Cigna, we have MagnaCare, Emblem, whatever it might be, based on the client's demographics, what product we're looking to put them in. Everyone's going to maybe be in a different situation, but based on that, that allows you to kind of have some things that if you wanted to leave, you would still have protection if you decided to leave and go back to a fully insured product. The two items at the bottom of this page, specific advance and aggregate accommodation, those are two great tools for first time. Well, specific advance we sell on every client. That just says once your employee goes to $50,000 in claims, Mr. Employer, guess what? You're done. All future claim payments on that person will now come from the stop loss carrier. You do not need to fund any more claims on that person. And we sell that in every policy that we write. Aggregate accommodation just gives our clients a max in claims to pay on a monthly basis. Because one of the things that happens with self-funding is there is an ebb and flow to claims. Okay. If you buy aggregate accommodation, we can tell you, hey, you're never going to pay more than X amount in a month for your claims. And if you have less one month, it just carries over. And if you have more one month, then it just is negated. So clients like that for budgeting purposes. They generally look to do it in their first and second year. And then after they see the cash flow and that they maybe don't need to worry about it, they do away with it. But it's a great tool initially to bring to a client to protect them on an ebb and flow type of basis. All right. Any questions, guys, while I'm going here? All right.
I don't see any questions, but maybe you're going to cover this in a future slide. But I think and there, what a segue. You read my mind, so I'll let you go.
So people say to me, Rob, why do I go self-funded? Well, I get it. There's savings. It seems like it might be, something that I'm interested in. How does this work? Where does the savings come from? And for us, it's pretty simple. The reasons you go self-funded are to really get out of the paradigm that you're in now, fully insured. All right. The first is plan flexibility. All right. Most carriers offer a one-size-fits-all health plan, meaning that if I pick up their schedule of benefits for Joe the plumber, and then I go down the block to the hedge fund, and they both have the Oxford 2540 EPO, their benefits are identical. Okay. TPA is a little bit different. All right. There is as long as we follow ERISA guidelines, which are federal guidelines, and they are slightly less liberal as state mandates, you can tinker with your plan in many different ways. So I might have a client that has a specialist copay of $50. And if someone goes to the acupuncture, it's at 40, and if someone goes for chiropractic, it's 60. We as a TPA can adjudicate that benefit without problem. Why is that important? Well, as time goes on, we are like an accounting firm. We see all of your claims. We know what buckets they fall into. So when we come to a client and say, hey, listen, here's some ways you can save a few dollars on your health plan, we can actually quantify those changes. People might say to me, oh, Rob, I need to save money. I want to up my copay $10. And we'll come back to a client and say, that's great. You're going to up your copay by $10. And on all the visits that you had this year, you're going to save about $2,200. Do you really want to do that? And they go, no, because we have the data for you to make an educated choice about your benefits. Often what you see in a fully insured model is carrier comes back to you with a list of all these decrements. Change this, the premium drops to Y. Do this, it drops to X. With us, that's kind of like, in my eyes, that's like taking blindly, just swinging a hatchet at your benefits, hoping you don't make up anyone upset and save money. With us, it's more of like taking a scalpel of where we know the costs are and pulling them out and surgically replacing it with a better idea. Okay. It's simple. You're never going to get that level of transparency in a fully insured program. This ties right into the next thing. It's a long-term strategy. Okay. Self-funding is not something you do 1 year and then go back to fully insured and then go back to self-funding. Generally, self-funded plans give the employer control to control cost and claims. And then when we add things in like effective plan management, disease management, and wellness, this gives a client a long-term solution to controlling healthcare costs. Okay. Being fully insured every year and jumping from carrier to carrier is not controlling your claim cost. It's just simply like, bait and switching every year and hoping that, when you move there, you have a better experience. We would like to tell clients, hey, listen, this is the disease states that exist inside your plan. Okay. For example, I can tell you 8% of the average group is diabetic. Okay. We see some groups here in New York in the 5 boroughs that have it as high as 12 or 14%. So in those clients, we knew right away we needed to put a diabetes management program in to help drive claims down. Okay. That's what we're able to do. And that over a long period of time is going to lead to less people in the ER, less people hospitalized, and less issues. Because a controlled diabetic versus a non-controlled diabetic cost differential can be as great as $3,800 to $5,000 a year to a health plan. The next area that we self-fund is tax savings. All right. Like I had touched on before, you're only liable to pay taxes on stop loss insurance. Conversely, in a fully insured plan, you're going to pay taxes on the total premium paid. Big difference there. Okay. And those taxes are embedded in your premium, so it's not like you can pull them out anyway. And then big cost savings, over past 10 years, our clients are averaging 10 to 15 to 20% savings over a fully insured plan. And fully insured premiums have more than outpaced the cost of a self-insured plan, just making this an option that many employers cannot ignore. I will tell you, when I first started writing business at the TPA, the groups were much larger, right? It was, if you're not 500 lives, you don't even think about self-funding. Well, with the advent of electronic claims data, electronic claims processing, and stop loss, the underwriters catching up with the marketplace, that has led us to a much better place. And the average group size has been dropping for years now at IBA. Okay. And this is just a nice chart that just goes over, hey, where is less or more from the employer? You've got fully insured on the left-hand side, what makes up their renewal and the components to it. And those simple 4 things don't exist inside a self-funded plan. And they're all the things that everyone hates about an insurance company, right? Reserves. So this is a perfect one. Obviously, we all have claims, we have trends, we have administrative cost, we have network access fees, but reserves is a big one. When you are self-funded, you pay claims as they are presented to you. When you are fully insured, you write a check for the entire amount of your premium, and a huge chunk of that is reserves for claims you might not ever incur and the insurance carrier might not ever have to pay. Okay. That's a big piece. The other thing is, if you look at a renewal calculation for a fully insured carrier, the way they determine how they're going to pay themselves is called retention. And retention is just simply a percentage of your claims. Meaning, if I'm Oxford and you have a bad claim year, and let's say you had 30% more claims than you had the year before, guess what? If I'm Oxford, I get paid 17% of your claims as my retention to pay them. That's how I decided I'm going to pay myself. Good news for me, I just got an increase because you, Mr. Client, did poorly. Self-funding is a little bit different. At the TPA, we say we're going to charge you $30 per employee per month, let's say, to pay your claims for the next 2 years, regardless if you have $100 of claims or $3 million of claims. We don't care. We're going to charge you a per employee per month fee. It has nothing to do with your experience. Okay. Pooling charge. A pooling charge is a pooling charge is the same as stop loss insurance. Okay. It's inside your fully insured contract. However, it is not movable to you. You cannot ask for different terms on it. You cannot ask for a higher pooling charge. It is basically locked inside the insurance carrier and you never get to touch it. Premium taxes, I had hit on those earlier. We know self-funded, we're only paying premium taxes on the actual insurance piece. And then obviously this is my favorite here, insurance company profit and overhead. Okay. Insurance companies are not in the business to lose money. If you look at any of the major stocks of the insurance companies that are listed on the NASDAQ and on the Dow and everywhere else, you will see that many of them have had record profits over the last 2 to 5 years. Reason being is because it's a great business model. Okay. It is the only business model that is 100% inflation proof. It is the only business model that goes up on average 8 to 10% a year. So you would be foolish to not be involved in that business model and make a tremendous amount of money in it. Okay. And then stop loss premiums don't exist with a fully insured carrier, exist with a TPA. And like I said before, flexible, you can pick your risk tolerance over time. And that to us is really what this is about, right? There's two things inside a self-funded health plan that you have control over. The first is the financial aspect that you purchase as Mr. CFO and CEO. And then the second is the benefit plan that you give to the employees, Mr. and Mrs. HR. So you have the two different aspects that you have full control over that you do not have in any other paradigm. And listen, like I had said before, average savings first year, 15 to 20%. And then that usually continues at like a below single digit increase. It's usually some below double digits. Our average increase this year, this was a very good year for self-funding. Even with COVID, utilization is down about 40% at the TPA. It was probably one of the most palatable years for us in terms of renewing clients, just because utilization was down so much. And then these are some of the advantages of a third-party administrated plan through a TPA, right? Greater control and access to your data. You're not stuck with the autocratic and dominant practices of an insurance carrier. That's a big piece for me. You have access to all of the data that we have at the TPA. We also offer a best of breed approach, so that's multiple networks, different utilization review vendors, and cost containment strategy per each individual client's needs. Okay. Also been told, if you were to contrast us to a fully insured carrier, we have a velvet glove approach to dealing with large and difficult claims. We know who the people are inside your plan that are incurring costs. We have case management associated with them. We have a concierge service that works with them, where a fully insured carrier might not even know they exist. Okay. We have a much greater emphasis on cost containment, and we'll use multiple vendors to ratchet a claim and to get a claim to at a fairer basis to you, the employer. And also we have the quicker turnaround time on claim and claim payments, just because we're not just a big bureaucratic machine. Our average turnaround time on claims is like 3 days, where a carrier is 30. And then, like I had hit on before, major savings over any type of fully insured plan. And my big things are at the bottom, and what I've come to find out, and I could tell you about my clients, there's a much stronger bond with a employer, TPA, and broker than there is in a fully insured plan. We become very intimate with our clients, who works there, and the day-to-day, interactions, weekly interactions with them. And there's also some things we can do as a TPA. We can handle benefits that are non-medical as well. Eyeglass all different bells and whistles that if you went to a carrier, they would look to charge you money. I also say so like one perfect example is we come across a client that says, I have an AHSA or an HRA plan. Can you administer it? Well, our first question is, why do you have an HRA plan? Typically you have one because you had to be forced into one. You were fully insured, right? You wanted to save money. So you took this HRA plan and took on some self-funding. So we'll say to them, hey, listen, what's the plan you really want? And let us give you that plan, so you don't need to pay 2 administrators or have 2 administrators for a plan that only needs 1. All right. But, all that is really why self-funding has grown, especially over the last, I have to say, 8 to 9 year, the last 8 to 10 years, yeah, 8 to 10 years has got it started. And now in the last 5 years, we see, especially in our area, with the rates on the fully insured side. I mean, I just saw rates. We have a client that has a PPO plan, as a self-funded unit, which isn't a big deal for us because we negotiate claims out of network. The carrier quoted them the same plan fully insured, and the rate was $4,000 for a family. Our all-in cost of the TPA was like $1,600 for claims and for fixed. So, there's a big difference.
Rob, I'd be interested. I know you mentioned that claims were down 40% last year, and that's something we're seeing as a trend as well. I think, on every fully insured, self-insured, claims are definitely down due to the pandemic. There was no elective procedures going on. A lot of preventive visits are not going on. I saw, just to go back to that whole, the differences between self-funded and fully insured. And one of the things you talked about was taxes, right? So the other day I saw New York State issued an initiative where they're actually going to have a COVID tax that's associated and applied to medical plans. That's just another, having said that, I'd like to get your perspective on where you think claims are going as we come out of the pandemic. And what do you see? Are you seeing that there'll be a rush to, and a big strain on the insurance companies?
Yes.
One of the things we're seeing, particularly with United Healthcare, is they are really tightening their belt. The other day they announced they're going to be doing more scrutinizing audits on qualifying event elections and things like that. So, we would expect that that's in reaction to what's happened. But what's your viewpoint on how it's going to look a year from now?
I think eventually we're going to get back to, people going for elective surgeries. I think it's only a matter of time. I actually can send you an article that I follow this great stop loss underwriter who puts out a piece every 6 weeks on what she thinks is going to happen. And she's saying that suits too soon to tell, but you would be foolish to think that folks are not going to go get their knees repaired, their backs repaired. That's really what has been falling out. The second avenue that people have been avoiding are things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. They're doing them over Zoom. They're doing less of them. The only place we have an uptick is in mental health and substance abuse, and that's just because of obviously the state we're in. I do think at some point it will start to come back. Do I think it's going to shoot up 40% in one quarter? No, I think it'll be a gradual kind of pushback as people get comfortable and time goes on. That COVID tax does not exist in our plans, but we're seeing it. We're starting to see it already, and I'm very curious. This goes back to even on this slide here, reserves. Okay, when we look at a fully insured carrier's calculations, one of the things they put in there is a inflationary factor, right? And they use a very high number, 13, 15%. Generally, medical inflation somewhere about 8 to 9% to 7% in there in the last couple of years. Okay. But when you think about it, they predicate your renewal on that number, right? So they're already baking in an increase from the get-go on what they think your claims are going to be. So I tell people, it would be like me telling you, I want you to pay a predetermined estimation of what I think claims might be a year and a half from now. Like, that doesn't make any sense to us at a TPA. We say, hey, listen, we're going to give you something that has a fair max and a fair stopgap. And if claims go that high, guess what? You're protected. But if they don't, that's just more money that you saved. So I think it's a real thing that gets lost in the translation of the movement of self-funded to fully insured. I mean, from fully insured to self-funded. And those little things are going to add up. Another big piece, and it's not so important now because it's definitely leveled itself out after ACA. But before this, self-funded plans need to follow ERISA guidelines, which are not as conservative as state mandates. Okay, so an Oxford plan here in New York with 120 people on it, they need to follow every state mandate that Governor Cuomo tells them. Infertility mandate that just came out this year. Okay, they need to keep people on COBRA for 36 months. And anything else that Governor Cuomo decides to write into a law, they have to then put into their health plan. Well, guess what? That raises their claims, right? We tell clients, listen, IVF is a great thing to have. It's a beautiful thing to be able to give an employee the chance to have, multiple babies at once. But we can tell you of our experience, here's the effect that it'll have on your claims. This is what it could lead to. Now we make the employer the one that's in the driver's seat, not Governor Cuomo. Okay. And they go, you know what, Rob, that's worth it for my population. I will put that in my plan design. I don't have to, though, because now I'm an ERISA-based plan. But we have that conversation with our clients. And if you're going to be self-funded, it might not be something you want to do the first year. A lot of times we get clients that say, hey, you're saving me so much money, IBA, in year one. Just keep my health plan the same way as it is now. All right. Next year at renewal, maybe we'll see how things run. And if we can take some of these things off the table, we will. And we're fine with that. But so those things go away. The other is COBRA. Here in New York State, you lose an employee, they're your employee for 36 months, which means they're on your claims experience for 36 months. When you're self-funded, federal guidelines say you only need to keep an employee on COBRA for 18 months. So, and that's helpful to the employer.
Last thing for me, Rob, just would like to hear your perspective on geographically where your clients are. As we know, in New York, employers that have under 100 FTEs aren't able to self-insure because of the stop loss rules, but that's different in other areas. So if maybe you could speak to that and how employers might best take advantage of these types of services.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up. So yeah, in New York State, you need to have greater than 100 full-time employees to be eligible to write a self-funded plan. However, if you do and have only 50 or 60 or 40 people enrolled, you can have a self-funded plan. Okay. It goes by full-time employees. Do not need to be 100 enrolled. Generally, the stop loss carrier in New York State likes to see at least 50 people enrolled for risk purposes, and they don't really file products that go below that, but we can do that. Outside of New York, the rules get much different. In the state of New Jersey, we can write groups down to 25 lives, self-funded. And then the further south you get, it seems to pretty much fall into that wheelhouse. The more heavily regulated insurance states do have some stricter parameters put on self-funded groups. And it's a shame because I can tell you the smaller groups that I have and that are grandfathered in, they would never go back to fully insured. It's cost prohibitive to them. And the control that they get is, it's paramount compared to where they are in the fully insured marketplace. But if you get a case, or if you have think this is something you're interested in, we absolutely will take a look at you and based on your state situs, decide what would be appropriate for you in terms of risk.
Great.
And that's our job. That's our job as a TPA, and your job as a broker, Ed. I always tell clients, there's it seems like a lot of moving pieces here. But if you were to go into any one of my clients' renewals, the nice thing about having a client self-funded is I'm not telling them, when I get to the table and say, hey, here's your renewal, I am not telling them anything they don't already know. Okay. Because don't forget, you fund claims as they come in a self-funded entity. So if you're having a good year, guess what? When I walk in, it's kind of like, Rob, we know we're having a good year. Let's cut to the chase. What can we do to save even more money? And if they're having a poor year, all right, it's, hey, where are the costs coming from? I already knew I wasn't having a great year. What are we doing, IBA, to mitigate that? And for us as a TPA, and for Ed, you as a broker, I mean, the stop loss market is much, much bigger than the fully insured market. If you go to market on a fully insured group, you've got maybe 4 to 5 carriers in the tri-state area that are viable, entities for you to bring a client fully insured. Well, for us, we have the networks already, so we don't need to worry about that. But the reinsurance market, the financial component, we work probably successfully with close to about, 16 different stop loss vendors, and have business with all of them. So that allows us many more places to find homes for cases sometimes when, they don't have one.
Great. Well, this was great, Rob. Thank you. I'll just ask if anybody, before we wrap up, we're just after 1 o'clock right now. Time goes by fast when we have a great topic. So does anybody have any questions for Rob before we wrap up?
On those, sometimes on a hospital claim, you get that tax, that 9.65, whatever it is, percent tax. It says something with the ACA.
Yep.
Is that something you renegotiate or?
So that tax is what's called a GME expense. That is on every hospital claim in the state of New York. Okay.
Mhm.
The way it works is follows. A group or an insurance carrier pays a monthly fee to be put in what's called the New York State's goods pool. All right. You're going to laugh when I tell you this. If you're enrolled in the goods pool, you pay a 9.85% tax on every hospital claim that's embedded into the claim. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't enroll into the pool, because I just took over a TPA's client that did not enroll the client in the pool,
Right.
you pay 33.5% on that same hospital claim. So we tell clients,
better choice. Yeah.
you must enroll in the pool and you must pay the tax, unfortunately.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. And they'll tell you, that's to keep our beautiful hospital system here in New York, squeaky clean. But I can tell you there's a few hospitals that if I woke up in, I'd say, get me out of here immediately. And I have a few of them maybe as my client. I'm not going to say much more than that, but yeah.
Let me ask you, is there going to be a time that patients, members, employees, whatever, can see the actual costs of what things are before getting things done?
Absolutely.
That's supposed to be a hot thing from last year, from what was supposed to be in law, but I haven't heard much of it.
So this is a big piece of what the hospitals don't want to do.
No, of course. Yeah.
They have a document called the Charge Master, which actually shows what they attribute the cost of for that aspirin that they charge $9 for, what they actually paid for it. They do never, ever, ever, ever want to give that out. And they are supposed to be becoming transparent. It has been a big issue in the last year and a half. I personally think that's going to be the future of healthcare. I think as time, so I'll give you just a quick little overview.
Sure.
The networks, Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna.
Mm-hmm.
If I go and have a knee surgery in one of the major hospitals here in New York, my payment through one of those carriers is about 350% of Medicare to the hospital. Okay. The hospital will tell you that it has to be 350% because 60% of the people that come in through their doors are Medicare or Medicaid. Okay. Where the government is saying we're only paying you X, and the hospital says, well, we lose 10 cents on every dollar that you pay me. So that leaves everyone else with private insurance through one of the carriers to be the basically profit center for those hospitals. Okay. One of the things, now I can tell you one of the things that some self-funded plans do, and we have these plans as well at IBA. They're generally not the first step a client takes from going fully insured, but they are becoming more in vogue, and they're very in vogue in other parts of the country. As a self-funded plan, there is no rule that you have to use Blue Cross, United, Cigna, or Aetna to access providers.
Right.
What ERISA law says is you have the right to pay what's fair and equitable in your geographical area for care. So we have certain clients that say, Mr. Hospital, just on hospitals, we're going to pay you 125% of Medicare. If you don't like it, we could maybe pay you up to a little bit more, but we're not going above, they don't know this, but let's say we're not going above 160%. And if you don't like that, see us in court.
Wow.
And I can tell you that very often the hospital will not show up in court or will avoid court because the first thing they have to do when they get to court is basically show that charge master of what it actually caused them to give that entity a knee surgery. So when they see that it was, at Medicare a little bit above, the judge goes, well, the plan paid you 125% of Medicare. You should be all set. Done. So that is where healthcare is moving in the next 5 to 10 years. We're not there yet because the networks still control the majority of private health insurance. That's just the way it is. But that is
we're getting there. We're getting there.
We're getting there because listen, everything everything's transparent now. I mean, this is the only thing that people buy that you have no idea what the true cost is.
Right. It's transparent to the insiders right now, but not to everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
But interesting.
Good question.
Great question. Great question.
Anything else?
Oh, yes, but I can't, there's a lot of information here, there's things.
We're going to have Rob back. Rob and I have already.
Don't worry, I'll come back.
As you can see, these conversations about it are not just about self-insurance, right? We're talking about the cost of care and transparency and things like this. This can dovetail into a lot of different conversations, I think, that need to be had. So Rob and I have already talked about that, and we'll be having Rob back in the future to maybe get in to some more of what you're asking, David, but great question.
It's just I almost feel sorry for groups that are small, like under 10 employees, and they're getting hit with that premium you mentioned, $4,000 for family once or close to it. I'm telling you, it's insane.
It is.
They really don't have any choices in New York.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, it's 1:10, so I want to let everybody wrap up. Thank you, everybody. Rob, great job. Thank you.
Ed.
Much appreciate.
Thank you very much.
You being with us today. Everybody have a great week, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
All right. Be well.
Take care. Have a good day.
Very informative.
All right. Take it easy. Thank you. Have a great day.
We'll be sending out the presentation and the video as well.
Perfect. Oh, great. I can send me a copy. That'd be great. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank
got
you.
it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.